Amid the ceaseless stream of corporate paperwork crossing Elon Musk's desk, a single unassuming white envelope stands out. The handwriting feels familiar, yet he can't place it immediately. Upon opening it, the first word sees his breath: "Dear Dad, it's been 3 years since we last spoke." The letter is from his 20-year-old daughter Vivian, now studying art conservation in college. As he reads about her efforts restoring damaged photographs and ancient documents, he uncovers a poignant metaphor challenging his beliefs about fractured relationships and what can be salvaged when something precious seems lost forever. On an ordinary Tuesday, the envelope arrived at Elon Musk's office. Among the daily influx of business reports, proposals, and correspondence cluttering his desk, this plain white envelope stood apart, his name handwritten on the front, no return address. His assistant placed it atop the pile, sensing its personal nature. The office was unusually calm that day, the typical flurry of activity momentarily stilled. Beyond the expansive windows, the California sun began its descent, casting elongated shadows across the meticulously landscaped grounds. Inside, the modern minimalist decor, clean lines, neutral tones, created a space designed for clarity and purpose. Elon had just wrapped a marathon of meetings and was about to dive into production reports when the envelope caught his eye. The handwriting stirred a vague recognition, though he couldn't pinpoint it. There was something distinct in the letter's slant, the pressure of the pen, tugging at distant memories. Curiosity piqued, he set aside the reports and opened it, revealing several pages of handwritten text on simple lined paper, the kind college students use for notes. The script was neat, deliberate, each word seemingly weighed before being committed to paper. The opening line stopped his heart for a beat: "Dear Dad, it's been 3 years since we last spoke." The letter came from his estranged daughter, 20-year-old Vivian Jenna Wilson. Their bond had ruptured years ago over deeply personal matters tied to her identity and life choices. The fallout was painful for both, compounded by public scrutiny. Despite attempts to stay connected, the gulf between them widened until communication ceased entirely. For a moment, Elon stared at the letter, torn between continuing or stopping. Part of him feared what might follow: anger, accusations, or a formal severing of ties. Yet another part, ever hopeful for reconciliation, urged him to read on. His hands trembled slightly as he proceeded. The letter wasn't what he expected, not a litany of blame, but something far more surprising. Vivian wrote about her current life, her studies in art history at a small liberal arts college, the tiny apartment she shared with 2 roommates, her part-time job at a local cafe. She detailed her passion for art conservation, preserving history and legacy for future generations. She described her off-campus apartment with its mismatched furniture and a window box where she grew herbs, her roommates, Sarah, an environmental science major, and Miguel, a music composition student who played piano at odd hours, the quaint cafe where she worked, its regular patrons who knew her by name, and the elderly owner who'd become a mentor of sorts. Most significantly, she shared her discovery in art conservation, blending her love for history, attention to detail, and patience for meticulous work. She described the satisfaction of carefully removing decades of grime from a painting, watching colors emerge that had been hidden for generations, or mending tears in ancient documents with near-invisible repairs. "Lately, I've been thinking a lot about preservation," she wrote. "Not just of paintings or sculptures, but of connections, memories, family histories, about what we choose to restore, what we let fade, and why that choice matters." As Elon read, his meetings and deadlines faded from focus. The world beyond his office, with its demands, expectations, and urgency, seemed to recede, leaving only the bond between him and his daughter's words. Vivian recounted a project at her college's small museum, where she helped restore a collection of faded family photographs from the early 1900s. Donated by descendants of the region's first settlers. Over decades, the images had deteriorated, faded, water-stained, torn, and creased. Her task was to painstakingly restore them for proper preservation and display. "One photograph struck me deeply," she wrote. "A father and daughter stand by an old car, neither smiling, as was typical for photos of that era. But they stand close, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. The curator told me the photo was taken weeks before the father's sudden death, making it their last image together. The description hit Elon hard. He could almost see the scene, the formal pose of early photography, the vintage car, the father's hand on his daughter's shoulder, a fleeting moment frozen in time, its significance clear only in hindsight. Elon paused, his vision blurring. He rose from his desk and walked to the office window, gazing at the landscape below to steady himself before continuing. The sun had dipped lower, bathing everything in a golden glow. From this height, people moved like tiny figures in a diorama, each carrying their own stories, connections, regrets, and hopes. After a few minutes, he returned to his desk and resumed reading. As I worked to restore that image's clarity, carefully removing discoloration and time's damage, I found myself thinking about impermanence, Vivian continued. How relationships we assume will last forever can be damaged or altered by circumstances and choices. How what seems irreparably broken can sometimes be restored, though never the same as before. She detailed the meticulous restoration process, how each photograph demanded unique techniques, requiring her to study the original materials. Sometimes, the best approach wasn't to erase all signs of age but to stabilize what remained, preventing further decay while honoring the object's journey through time. The metaphor was clear, if not heavy-handed. Vivian drew a parallel between her work with these damaged photographs and their own strained relationship, hinting at the possibility of restoration, not to erase the past, but to find value in what endured. Further in, the letter revealed how this project awakened Vivian to the realization that, despite all that had transpired, there were memories and connections she didn't want to lose to time and distance. "I'm not writing to pretend nothing happened," she clarified midway. "We've both made mistakes. We've both said things we can't take back. But recently, my art conservation professor said that sometimes the most valuable parts of what we restore aren't the pristine sections, but the evidence of the repair itself. The gold lacquer in Japanese kintsugi pottery doesn't hide the cracks, it highlights them, making them part of the object's history and beauty." Elon nodded slightly, recognizing the reference to kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold, creating something more beautiful and valuable than the original, unmarred piece. He'd always admired the concept, though he'd never considered applying it to relationships. What followed surprised him even more: Vivian's reflections on specific memories from her childhood, before their bond fractured. Elon teaching her chess at 7, patiently explaining strategies despite her repeated mistakes, a road trip at 10, stopping at a small-town diner where they built a tower of coins on the table until it collapsed, at 12, when she feared a school presentation, and he shared his own childhood struggles with stuttering and public speaking to ease her anxiety. Each memory was recounted with vivid clarity, transporting Elon back: Vivian's focused expression during a chess move, her delight as their coin tower teetered, the way her shoulders relaxed as he shared his vulnerabilities to help her face hers. These weren't grand, dramatic moments, no lavish vacations or extravagant birthdays, but small, everyday interactions, often overlooked. Yet Vivian had held on to them, treasuring them through years of silence. "These memories are like the photographs I'm trying to preserve," she wrote. "Not because they paint a perfect picture of our relationship, we both know that's not true, but because they're real. They happened, and they mattered to me." Elon recalled other moments she didn't mention, helping with her science homework, teaching her to ride a bike, staying up all night to build a treehouse she designed. Their relationship hadn't been flawless, misunderstandings, disagreements, and natural parent-child friction existed, but before their estrangement, there was always a deep connection, a mutual understanding others couldn't grasp. The final paragraph struck Elon with unexpected force. "I don't know what comes next, Dad. I don't know if reconciliation is possible for us. Maybe too much has happened. But I wanted you to know that even as I establish my own identity and find my own path, these memories haven't been discarded. They've been carefully preserved, like the photographs I've been restoring, not perfect, bearing marks of age and damage, but still valuable, still worth keeping. I thought you should know." She signed it simply, Vivian. The signature's simplicity underscored the letter's weight, not "your daughter" or another title, just her name, acknowledging her distinct identity and the distance between them, but also an opening, a possibility. After finishing, Elon sat motionless at his desk for a long while. Urgent calls and knocks at the door didn't disturb him. His assistant, sensing the significance of the plain envelope, had cleared his schedule for the day. Outside, the light shifted, golden afternoon giving way to the cooler hues of early evening. The office dimmed, but Elon made no move to turn on the lights, preferring the shadows that matched his reflective mood. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the office, he finally took a sheet of paper and a pen. Finding the right words proved challenging for a man accustomed to decisive action and clear directives. In business, he never struggled with words. Communications were direct, efficient, sometimes blunt. But this required a different nuance, a vulnerability, an openness to possibilities without expectations. He started and discarded several drafts, filling his usually tidy wastebasket with crumpled attempts, each too formal, too guarded, or not authentic enough for the moment. He wrote about how her letter affected him, how her memories of their chess games and road trips lingered with him too, and how, despite their differences, he'd never stopped caring or hoping they'd one day reconnect. "The Japanese art of kintsugi you mentioned feels particularly apt," he wrote. "Maybe what tore our relationship apart can't, and shouldn't, be hidden or erased. But perhaps, with time and care, those same broken places can become the strongest parts of a new kind of bond, not what it was, but with its own integrity." He wanted to say more, to explain his perspective on their estrangement, apologize for his role, ask about her life, but instinct told him that would be too much, too soon. Like the fragile photographs Vivian learned to restore, this tentative reunion required delicate handling, patience, and respect for its current state. He concluded with an open invitation, not pressing, not demanding, but offering a door to step through if and when she was ready, a simple coffee, a neutral place, no expectations beyond starting a conversation. After signing, he reread it, then carefully folded it into an envelope. Unlike the reports and business correspondence his assistant typically handled, this was something he mailed himself. 2 weeks later, in a quiet cafe halfway between Elon's office and Vivian's college, father and daughter sat across from each other for the first time in 3 years. They chose a small, independent coffee shop neither had visited before, a neutral ground free of associations or memories. The cafe was warm and cozy, with mismatched furniture that somehow worked, local art on the walls, and the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee. They picked a corner table, away from other patrons, where their conversation wouldn't be overheard. Vivian arrived first, choosing a seat facing the door. When Elon entered, there was a brief moment of uncertainty. Would they shake hands, hug, or just nod? They settled on an awkward half-hug, neither fully committed. But both acknowledging this was more than a business meeting. Their conversation started haltingly, both careful not to reopen old wounds. They ordered coffee and pastries, commenting on the menu and decor, safe topics requiring no emotional investment. "How was your drive?" Elon asked. "Not bad. Yours?" "Fine. Traffic was light." Simple exchanges, the kind strangers might share, but beneath them ran deeper currents of awareness, of all they weren't saying, the history they weren't touching, the care they held for each other. When Vivian began describing her current project preserving a collection of handwritten Civil War-era letters, Elon's genuine interest broke through the tension. It was something real, meaningful in her life, and his questions came naturally, uncalculated. He asked thoughtful questions about her techniques, listening with the same focus he reserved for his engineers. How did she handle the fragile paper? What solutions did she use to clean without damaging? How did she decide which repairs to make and which signs of age to preserve? "The paper is so delicate," Vivian explained, her reserve melting as she spoke about her passion. "You have to work slowly, with immense patience. One wrong move, and you could lose something irreplaceable." Her hands moved expressively, mimicking the careful techniques she'd learned, her eyes alight. For a moment, Elon saw the eager child she'd once been, eager to share her discoveries. It's a lot like what we're trying to do now, Elon said softly during a pause. A small, genuine smile crossed Vivian's face. I suppose it is. This exchange marked a turning point. They'd found a metaphor that worked for both, a way to acknowledge what they were attempting without diving into painful details directly. Restoring their relationship, like preserving historical documents, would require care, patience, and acceptance that the outcome would bear witness to what had happened. As the coffee stretched into evening, neither rushed to leave. They ordered second cups, then small sandwiches when they realized they were hungry. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by cautious awareness of the past. Like dancers learning new steps, they established a different rhythm of interaction. Their conversation dipped carefully into deeper waters, still not addressing all that had happened, but recognizing that healing, like art conservation, demanded both technical skill and patient, intentional care. Vivian shared more about her studies, professors, and aspirations for a career in museum conservation. Elon discussed some of his current projects, particularly those focused on sustainability and long-term human welfare. They found common ground in a shared desire to preserve what matters for future generations, whether historical artifacts or environmental resources. You've always thought long-term, Vivian noted during a natural lull. Yes, Elon admitted. Though sometimes I was so focused on the distant future, I missed what was happening right in front of me. The statement hung between them, not quite an apology, but an acknowledgement of one factor in their estrangement. Vivian nodded slightly, accepting the remark without responding directly. They weren't ready to dissect what went wrong, but they could begin recognizing patterns without blame. When they finally parted, their goodbye wasn't the formal handshake of strangers or the warm embrace of fully reconciled relations. Instead, it held something more valuable, a genuine recognition between two people beginning to build a new kind of connection, one honoring both their shared past and their separate paths forward. Maybe we could do this again, Elon suggested as they stood outside the cafe. I'd like that, Vivian replied. There's an exhibit of restored photographs at the college gallery next month. If you're interested. I'd love to, Elon said, recognizing the invitation as not just a chance to see her work, but to share something meaningful to her. They parted with cautious optimism, each feeling something significant had begun, not a return to what was, but the first careful steps toward what could be. Over the following months, they nurtured a deliberate, gradual restoration of communication. Their interactions were intentional, not routine, planned meetings, not casual drop-ins, specific invitations, not assumed inclusion. Each encounter built on the last, adding layers of understanding and reconnection. Elon attended the small exhibit showcasing Vivian's conservation work. Walking through the gallery, he was genuinely impressed by the before and after examples of her restorations, photographs and documents once nearly unrecognizable, now stabilized and preserved, retaining their historical value. He listened intently as she explained her methods to other visitors, proud of her expertise and quiet confidence. Vivian accepted an invitation to her younger brother's birthday party, a small but significant step, rejoining family celebrations she'd missed during their estrangement. She arrived with carefully chosen gifts and reconnected with her siblings with less awkwardness than anyone expected. These were small, intentional steps, neither rushing the process nor demanding more than the other was ready to give. They were learning a new way of relating, not as the father and young child they once were, but as adults with separate lives choosing to stay connected. To distant observers, family, friends, the occasional journalist who spotted them together, this shift seemed almost miraculous. But those closer understood it wasn't magic that bridged their estrangement, but courage to acknowledge the pain, the enduring bond between them, and a willingness to build something new on that honest foundation. Elon's other children noticed changes in their father, a new thoughtfulness, a greater readiness to listen, an enhanced ability to see situations from perspectives beyond his own. Colleagues noted he occasionally referenced insights from Vivian's conservation work when discussing complex problems, drawing parallels between restoring damaged artifacts and addressing corporate challenges. Vivian's neighbors and close friends observed that reconnecting with her father brought her a sense of peace. It's like she shed a heavy backpack she'd been carrying, her roommate Sarah remarked to another friend. She's still the same independent, driven person, but there's less tension in her shoulders. A year after receiving the letter, Vivian invited Elon to her college's spring art exhibit, where her work conserving Civil War-era letters garnered significant recognition. The exhibit capped months of painstaking effort to preserve and display correspondence between soldiers and their families during one of America's most divisive periods. That evening, the gallery was transformed. Dim lighting protected the fragile documents while allowing visitors to read the carefully preserved words. Photographs of the letter writers accompanied the correspondence, putting faces to the handwritten words. As Elon examined the meticulously preserved and displayed documents, he was struck by how personal and immediate they felt despite the passage of time: men writing home from battlefields, mothers sending news from family farms, children describing daily life to absent fathers, ordinary people in extraordinary times, bridging distance with ink and paper. Then he noticed something that made him pause: a small handwritten note beside Vivian's curatorial statement at the exhibit's entrance. It read simply, "Preservation isn't about erasing the marks of time and experience, but ensuring what's valuable endures despite them." Later, as they stood in a quiet corner of the reception after the exhibit's opening, he asked her about it. Vivian explained, "Some lessons aren't just about art. They're worth sharing." Elon nodded, understanding the dual meaning. That's an important principle. In business, people often want to erase mistakes or pretend setbacks didn't happen, but sometimes those are the most valuable parts of the journey. Exactly, Vivian agreed. In conservation, we talk about an object's story, not just when it was created, but everything that's happened to it since. That all becomes part of its history and value. They spoke of art preservation, but also of themselves, how their own story, including the painful estrangement, shaped who they were and who they could be to each other moving forward. "I'm proud of your work," Elon said simply. "Not just the technical skill, which is impressive, but the philosophy behind it. You're preserving what matters." "Thank you," Vivian replied. The simple acknowledgement carried weight beyond the specific compliment. "That means a lot." It was perhaps the most meaningful connection Elon had ever helped restore, not measured in business valuations or tech achievements, but in the patient rebuilding of understanding between them, across generations and differences. Their relationship would never be what it was before their estrangement. Too much had happened, too many words spoken, too many divergent experiences had shaped them. But what they built now had its own integrity, a connection rooted in mutual respect for each other's identities and perspectives, a willingness to listen without rushing to fix or change, and gratitude for what remained strong despite what had broken. They didn't agree on everything, that wasn't the goal. Vivian maintained her independence and views on many issues. Elon continued approaching problems from his unique lens. But they found a way to value their bond despite these differences, seeing disagreements not as threats, but as opportunities to understand each other better. Practically, their renewed relationship maintained appropriate boundaries. They didn't speak daily or share every detail of their lives, but established regular contact, occasional lunches, attending each other's significant events, holiday gatherings no longer fraught with discomfort. They created a new normal that worked for them both. For parents and children watching this story unfold, it serves as a reminder that even in the most challenging estrangements, paths to healing can sometimes be found, when we have the courage to acknowledge both our differences. This concludes our narrative journey. I trust you found this gripping saga of intrigue, cutting-edge innovation, and astonishing discoveries captivating. From where are you tuning in today? I'm curious to learn which corner of the globe this tale has touched. If this escapade held your interest, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for a steady stream of compelling, mind-expanding stories just like this one. Fresh material is posted frequently, ensuring you're always in the loop for the newest spellbinding adventures. Be sure to pass this video along to your loved ones and friends. It's a great way to share positivity and insight while expanding our circle of story enthusiasts. Your encouragement is invaluable. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to welcoming you back for the next tale.